It seems like this past year we've been overindulged with prop hunt-inspired games, with each one featuring its own unique flair in an attempt to distinguish itself from the rest. Midnight Ghost Hunt is no exception. Developed by Vaulted Sky Games and published by Coffee Stain, Midnight Ghost Hunt pits two teams of 5 players each against one another. One team plays as ghosts, whose job it is to hide from hunters, while simultaneously attempting to pick off individual hunters that stray from the pack, if possible. The hunters have 5 minutes to eliminate all 5 of the ghosts. If a single ghost survives when time runs out and the clock strikes midnight, the other 4 ghosts are automatically brought back to life. Or at least as close to life as ghosts can be, I suppose. And the tables turn, with the ghosts now hunting the hunters. As I referenced a moment ago, ghosts can attack hunters at any time. It's just simply rather stupid to do so during that first round, unless you're in a position to quickly eliminate a player, usually with the help of one of your spectral teammates, and run away and hide in a new spot before the other hunter players come running to your location. When a hunter spots a ghost, even if said ghost is possessing a prop, they can ping the ghost with a marker alerting all other hunters on the map to where the player last saw that ghost. So the natural flow of the game strongly counters any sustained ghost and player combat in that first round. At its core, Midnight Ghost Hunt is very much a team-based FPS. All the hiding skills in the world won't save you if you don't know how to survive a brief skirmish. Luckily, the game grants both the hunters and the ghosts certain active and passive skills, as well as certain other tools that will grant them different ways of combating the other team. Even eliminated ghost players can still assist their fellows in, shall we say, a spiritual way, such as freezing the air around a hunter or even a group of hunters if they're in close proximity to one another, which prevents the affected hunter or hunters from being able to sprint for several seconds. Or you can throw nearby objects around to make it look like a ghost disguised as a prop is moving around, etc. While hunters can't really do anything to contribute once they've been eliminated, they can certainly do a hell of a lot while they're alive. Hunters can bring back other eliminated hunters with a defibrillator. However, the ghost can attempt to prevent this by consuming the defeated hunter's soul. Doing so, though, will reveal their presence and leave them momentarily vulnerable to being attacked. Hunters can also do something similar by cleaning up ghost shards with a vacuum cleaner after defeating a ghost. This results in that ghost being rendered physically weaker and more vulnerable during that post-midnight second stage, where the ghosts are attacking the hunters. I'm not going to go into every tool and mechanic that illustrates these play and counterplay interactions between hunters and ghosts, but suffice it to say that there is a lot. In my first few matches, I originally believed the ghosts were insanely underpowered compared with the hunters, but this isn't really true. Once you accept the fact that ghosts aren't intended to really survive sustained combat against the hunters in that first round, as well as the fact that you can't stay sitting in one spot as a stationary prop forever, as you'll start to build up ectoplasm, which basically is ghostly radiation, which will gradually make it increasingly easy for hunters to find you, you start to understand what you're supposed to be doing, and as you become more acquainted with the different maps, you can begin to develop more cohesive strategies for keeping yourself mobile, while simultaneously staying out of the hunter's line of sight. One of the only problems I had while I was familiarizing myself with the game was that the tutorial you can optionally go through when you first boot up the game isn't exactly very helpful at understanding anything beyond the most basic mechanics. Luckily, the game does allow you to set up private matches if you want to. Granted, if you want it to be private, you'll have to explicitly set up a password because otherwise your match will be thrown into the normal matchmaking queue. But once you set a password, you can play an entire match with bots to get the feel of things without the added pressure of potentially letting down your teammates by not playing well. Doing anything the first time can add a certain degree of performance anxiety, as I'm sure most of us in our teenage years can personally attest to. And team-based PvP games are no exception. So after I got my ass kicked in the first match, I went back and practiced a bit with the bots. When I went back into the normal matchmaking a little while later, I found myself doing moderately better. With all the different factors to keep track of in any given match, there is going to be a natural learning curve. Midnight Ghost Hunt proves itself to be one of those games that's somewhat easy to learn but incredibly difficult to master. And to the best of my knowledge, there is not yet any skill-based matchmaking system, so it's quite possible that you'll find yourself being pitted against an entire team of players whose individual and combined skill far exceeds your own as a new player. I'm hoping that if this game takes off, that this will be somewhat addressed, but if not, whatever. Since this is not a competitive game and I don't have to worry about maintaining a skill rating like I would games like Overwatch, I'm not too disappointed or frustrated when my team loses. The maps featured here in Midnight Ghost Hunt are all very well designed. Each has their own visual, aesthetic, and theme, and the layout of each map is significantly different from one another, with each map also containing a decent assortment of unique props that fit in with the theme of that map. The only two downsides, however, where maps are concerned is that, number one, many of the maps tend to have a very limited number of staircases or other vertical connectors between levels. One of the levels, the school level, does have a few bounce pads that spring you up through the floor to the room above, but aside from that one map, pretty much your only way of getting to higher levels is by going to one of a handful of staircases. Unless you're a hunter who's carrying a grappling hook, of course. Given that most of the maps here have multiple floors, and being able to go up and down more easily would make things far more interesting for both teams, this is something I hope the developers expand on in future updates. My second pet peeve regarding maps is that, quite frankly, there aren't enough of them in the current game. At present, the game only includes about half a dozen maps, which isn't bad per se, but when you have such a limited map pool, that will result in players feeling like the game is excessively repetitive, which is not a good thing for the game's longevity. I really feel the developers could have launched with a few more, upping the starting total to about 10 or 12 maps instead, and then gone on to add a few more during early access. You can, of course, always add a few more maps over time post-launch, but in reality you only have one window in which to win most people over, and that's your launch window. After that, the best you can hope for is to retain a decent chunk of the people you've already won over. So why not launch with your best foot forward? The game's performance is another area I definitely want to see the developers improve on. I'm running this game off my NVIDIA 2070 RTX, which is well above the minimum spec requirement of a 1060, and it seems whenever this game has a lot of effects to render, like during that post-midnight second round where the players and ghosts are openly attacking one another, with objects being thrown around, flamethrowers spraying fire at the ghosts, energy guns blasting off, or even doing something as basic as just sprinting around at any time. All of it can and often will tank your frame rate. It's not uncommon for the game to dip below 30 FPS at times. I know a day one early access game will probably have its fair share of performance issues, and they can readily be fixed, but since they haven't been yet, it's a point worth noting. Overall, Midnight Ghost Hunt in most regards manages to live up to the moderately high expectations I had going into it. There's more than enough content to keep players invested for a good long while, and the progression system adds just enough reward incentive to incentivize exactly that. There are a few minor gameplay balance and performance optimization concerns, but none of them at any point render the game unplayable or even moderately unenjoyable. Hopefully over the course of early access, the developers will continue to add more content while refining what's already there, but we're going to have to wait and see. As ever, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to click the like button and comment below what you think of the game down below. I look forward to seeing you haunt my comment section, hiding in plain sight. Comments really help my videos get boosted in the algorithm, and plus I read and respond to nearly all the comments I get, so even if you want to drop a comment just to say hi or get my opinion on something, even if it's unrelated, I'll be happy to talk with you down there. Likewise, subscribing and clicking the bell really helps. I know it's cliche, no one wants to hear it, but YouTube algorithm is a pain in the ass to deal with. Doubly so as a small channel. This is Warrior Dan signing out. Stay awesome everybody, stay safe, and peace out.